Hello ladies and welcome back to another Black Clover anime review. This week's episode kind of showed us the chemistry between Asta and Noelle, and we also got to see a good side of the comedy that Black Clover provides, which I actually personally really like. But the first thing I want to talk about is in fact Asta and Noelle. One thing to note is that Asta is from the most poor region of the entire country. You know, he lived in a church, he's an orphan. He is the very opposite of a royal. And then we have Noelle, which is in fact a royal. She's at the very top instead. So Noelle is the richest of the richest, you know, and Asta comes from the poorest of the poorest. And we do get to see a nice chemistry between them, which displays that perfectly. You know, you have this whole personality behind Noelle where she still acts kind of like a royal, but at the same time she does acknowledge Asta for being a magic knight. But as far as anything else goes, she does still consider herself to be, you know, above them, because at the end of the day she's grown up being a royal, you know, even though she was treated really poorly by her family. But despite that, some of that royal attitude is obviously going to linger, even if, you know, she does acknowledge them in terms of power and whatnot. One example of the difference between Asta and Noelle is when Asta asks if she could help with the chores that he's doing, because he doesn't want to do it all on his own, and she explains that, oh, you know, I've never cleaned or done the laundry, anything like that in my life. You know, I've always had other people do it for me. And that just goes to show the difference between Asta and Noelle, because Asta does remark in the episode that what he's doing in this episode is no different from what he was doing in the church. So he kind of questions, you know, what is it exactly that a magic knight does, because to him it just felt like another day at the church, as he had his own life back then. But yeah, I mean, obviously, as we know later on in the episode, they came to this whole mission that they were gonna do, which we haven't gotten into yet, but they're on their way there, you know. So my point is that they did in a really good way show the difference between Asta and Noelle, because obviously she's royal. She's not going to have done all of these chores on her own, because, well, that's just how it is with royals, at least back in the day, you know. Even in real life, if you look back, you know, I don't know, a couple of 100 years back maybe, royalty typically don't do things like that on their own. Maybe even nowadays, I don't even know, to be honest, but at least back in the day this was the case. And Black Clover, among other series mind you, really does show this. They really want this kind of thing to stand out among royals, because that's kind of what makes them royals, I guess. You know, in some way you need to make royals different from commoners, and one good way to do that is to have them be spoiled, have other people do things for them and things like that. And that is exactly what happened in this episode, because Noelle, she doesn't know how to do any of these basic stuff. You know, she doesn't know how to do laundry, how to cook and all of that. So there's definitely room for her to grow as a character, not just as a magic knight. You know, she might learn how to do these things in the future, who knows. Anyway, so what I really want to talk about next is the comedy that Black Clover provides, because when you think about it, up until now, you've seen a lot of comedy, and this is a pattern that is going to linger for as long as the series goes on, because the comedy is something that Black Clover as a series puts a lot of weight to. You know, they want to really emphasize the comedy in this series, and I personally really like that, because that is one of the main reasons why I enjoy Black Clover so much. You know, as a shonen per se, the plot isn't that unique, but because they have this really heavy element of comedy, even heavier than most other shonen mind you, it does make it enjoyable for what it is. And this episode was a really good example. You know, at the very beginning of the episode, after Asta has done his chores, when they're sitting at the table, you have this really big comedic moment with Charmy trying to feed Asta and making her own food and all of that, you know. Even when he asks what a magic knight does, and, you know, Magne just goes up to school him and all that. And that is just, you know, the tip of the iceberg, you know. You've barely seen any of the comedy that is going to be coming into the series yet. And I can promise you that despite the fact that, you know, they put a lot of emphasis on it, it doesn't ruin the story whatsoever. It really doesn't. I mean, they don't really put comedy in tense moments where it shouldn't be, you know. The creator knows where to put it and where to avoid it, and that's what's important about Black Clover, because you can't really have comedy anywhere. I mean, you can have it in a lot of places, but if it's a bit too tense of a moment, you know, the comedy would just ruin it, and Black Clover doesn't really have that, which is a good plus. You know, you really don't want comedy to go so far as to ruin a series, because when I say that the series has a good emphasis on the comedy, people may be worried that the comedy is going to ruin the story of a shonen, but it really doesn't. You know, they really know how to limit it. I mean, there's a fine line between perfectly enough and way too much, and I think Black Clover does a really good job at staying to that fine line. I really have nothing to complain about when it comes to the comedy specifically. I mean, I could complain about the plot at certain times, you know, in certain arcs there are some plot points that aren't really as good maybe and all of that, but the comedy is something that I've barely ever seen anything wrong with. And yeah, as I said, this episode really did a good job. Even though, you know, it wasn't the biggest moment in the episode, it still had a pretty big emphasis of the episode, because other than that it was mostly us talking about the mission, and you saw Magna and Yami go to play cards with that guy, which we saw later on when they were playing strip poker or whatever, which is another comedy moment, mind you, which even further just explains how much comedy this series has. You know, in this whole episode you have that moment with the table when they were eating food, and then you had the whole Yami and Magna thing when they were playing strip poker and they lost all their clothes and all that, you know. Then we have the whole mission, you know, when Asta and Noelle are asked to go on a mission, which is what I want to talk about next. So the mission that Asta and Noelle are being asked to go on with Magna is quite interesting, because even before they go on the actual mission, you know, when we have the whole moment with the broom and Magna asks, why can't you fly a broom? And they both like, you know, Asta can't use magic and Noelle can't control magic, which just goes to show you that even though they're from completely different worlds, you know, one is a royal and one is not, they both have a problem with using magic. Even, I mean, they both have a grimoire and they both can use their own attacks and whatnot, but what they lack is the most basic understanding of magic, you know, control in Noelle's case, and actually being able to use it in Asta's case. Now there's one moment when they were actually moving towards the mission that really interested me in a different kind of way, because when they're sitting on the broom and talking, you know, while Magna is flying and Noelle is complaining about how he is flying, you know, he's not flying as straight as he could be maybe, and then we have this really interesting yet subtle thing with Asta where he actually, I don't really know what he was doing. He was kind of touching Noelle and she just flipped out on him. I don't really know what was going on there, I'll be honest. If anyone watching can tell me just what he did, I'd love to know, because I really couldn't tell what he was doing. Like, was he trying to get a better hold of the broom, or was he really interested in her ass? I'm honestly not sure. Please do let me know, by the way. That is something that's been bothering me ever since I watched the episode, which, I mean, I just cannot grasp what he was doing. He was like almost touching her and she just fucking flipped out and just smacked him off the broom, you know. Then we have the whole teaser with new villain, I guess, which you could easily tell was a villain. He just froze those boards and just obliterated them, you know. Nothing surprising there. I mean, it's kind of speaking as to what the arc is going to be. Well, not the arc, but the mission at least. You know, we get a feel that he's using ice magic of some sort, but we don't really know what part is going to play it. I mean, I kind of do, but if you're an anime only, you really don't. But other than that, I really don't have much else to say about this episode. It was a good episode, not the best we've had, but still a really good episode. So yeah, with that said, I think I'll be ending this video here. Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new to my channel. This has been your favorite host, Perm, and I will see you next time.